thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Connie Lund and I am leading marketing at Techolution. And we're excited that you joined us today for our webinar on 3 e-commerce strategies to win. We have both the business side for you today and also the technical side. And so please ask questions in your Q&A. Please ask questions. We'd like to have questions at the end and we'll answer them then. And this video recording will be available later and we'll send it out to you. So let's get started. So our presenters today are Love Telsidas, the CEO of Techolution. Love has a vision for leading digital transformation. He has 20 years experience in e-commerce and wanted to create this startup that's been going for 5.5 years. And we also have Tim DeLagio with us today, and he's our Chief Technical Officer. And he just recently became a certified Google Anthos Fellow in Hybrid Cloud. And so these two will be sharing their leadership around e-commerce. Just some quick things about Techolution. We are a startup and we really want to do cutting edge projects and, you know, tackle the hard things around digital transformation. Our headquarters are in New York City. We also have offices in Southeast Asia, Mauritius, which is just off of Africa, and India. So our model allows us to deliver across the globe. Our core practice areas at Techolution are really around cloud transformation. So that includes migration, it includes managed services, application modernization, and most of our customers are working with legacy systems. On top of that, we also work with AI and big data and advanced analytics and IoT and asset management. And then this aspect around e-commerce, the wow user experience, and all things digital. So the agenda for today, we want to talk about the pandemic really pushed retailers to the limits. Everything shifted online and you needed to respond, and there's still lots of opportunity. Brick and mortar has suffered just by the nature of what happened. And we believe that you need to engage and move forward and really look at your online platform and the experience you're giving customers. So we're going to be sharing 3 e-commerce strategies that we believe are necessary in today's world and also some case studies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Love.
Hi, everyone. As you all know, COVID has been devastating and disruptive to the whole world. In terms of health, it's cost people's lives, and also importantly, it's cost the economy, especially retailers. And many of you have been impacted, and as we know, the impact on GDPs around the world has been double-digit, like never seen in a long time. However, that's not been the story and the experience for everybody and every industry. What if I told you that there are certain industries like e-commerce, especially those retailers who invested in e-commerce early, building their e-com brand, as well as digital natives who started a retail business online, have benefited like never before. And with that said, I'm founder and CEO of Techolution, and we do a lot of work helping online brands and old school retailers adopt e-commerce and gain tremendous success. So if you don't believe me about the success of e-commerce, let's just take a look at what McKinsey Analytics just reported. They've seen in 90 days post-COVID, a 10-year growth in e-commerce. So it's been a pretty linear growth, and then we just saw this explosion that looks like a hockey stick effect. But in 3 months, So now the big question is, how did your business do during this mega event? Were you one of those that saw 10 years of growth in your retail business in 3 months? If you are, or even if you saw 7x, 8x, I would like to invite you to be a panelist on our next webinar so you can share your story with everybody else. But if you have seen meager growth, let's say 20, 30%, if you've seen 2x growth, that's still very, very weak compared to what the best of the best have seen since COVID. Or if you have not invested in e-commerce, you've been relying on your brick and mortar retail, then good news for you. It's not too late to start. You can still benefit from this growth. And if you want to learn how, I would like to invite you to stay through the rest of this webinar, where we're going to share the 3 winning strategies that we have learned from helping brick and mortars and digital natives be very, very successful with e-commerce. Now, some of you may be thinking, okay, so this was a mega event. It was a one-time thing. Is it going to go away? Is everything going to go back to normal? Is everybody going to just return to shopping in the store? Well, the answer is absolutely not, because mega trends like this have always impacted customer behavior. If you think about 9/11 was a massive event, especially for travel. And to date, 19 years later, a lot of people have forgotten about the event, or maybe emotionally, but how we travel at airports is just as difficult as it was post 9/11. So some of these trends do not go away, right? But secondly, I will tell you, prior to COVID, the trend was already projecting a 14% growth of e-commerce versus retail. But guess what? 14% doesn't sound like anything anymore with what we've seen since COVID. It's been an explosion. In addition to that, think about the Gen Z, right? They're coming of age. They are the new customers in the market. If you're a big retailer, you've saturated your market base. Everybody knows your brand. Well, the Gen Z who are now coming of age, they're entering the workforce and they have the ability to buy. They're your new target customers. And guess what? Unlike us, Gen X, millennials, and the older generation, we grew up shopping mostly brick and mortar, and then we learn how to shop online, right? Some of us are comfortable, some may not be, and we enjoy both. But Gen Z is a completely different beast, right? While we were going out to play on the streets, in our yard, soccer, football, bicycle, whatever, the Gen Z were watching other people play video game on YouTube. So they're a completely different breed, if you will, and they only want to shop online, right? That's what they know how to do. So that's a big market opportunity that's not going away. It's only going to grow. But in addition to that, the generation that was resisting the online shopping, because it's hard to have to relearn and technology and all this good stuff. And they also enjoyed going out shopping in the store. Well, guess what? After COVID, they had no choice but to learn to create online accounts, to buy online, because that was the only way with shutdowns around the world. So now that they've gotten a taste of the convenience, of the value of buying online, I do not think that they're going to go back, right? So they're going to stay. So big change in trend. So again, if you want to hear, whether you want to increase your online growth, your online business growth, or you're just starting, it's not too late, trust me, but you need to hurry up. And if you stay through the rest of this presentation, I promise you we're going to share the secrets, the top 3 strategies to achieving this kind of growth. Now, before we jump into that, I'm going to tell you about some of the common challenges. So if you already have an e-commerce presence, you probably can relate to this. if you haven't started, these are things that you should look out for. Number one is a lot of people have an e-commerce store, they have brick and mortar, but they don't really understand their customers. They don't have insights, they don't have visibility, they've not really invested in analytics. And that's a big problem that we see. So people are kind of shooting from the hip, making changes and innovating based on gut feeling. And sometimes they get it wrong, sometimes they get it right. There is a more methodical and scientific way to do it. And I'm going to share that with you a little bit later. In addition, people just create websites and they try to literally just convert their brick and mortar inventory and just put it online, and they think customers are just going to come. That doesn't work. Online is a whole different beast, right? You cannot possibly buy high foot traffic real estate, right? So online relies on value, relies on exceptional service, sometimes pricing, but pricing is a dangerous game to play because that's a race to the bottom, right? And unless you can, you have that kind of scale, you don't want to be in the race to the bottom, competing with the big behemoths. So commodity, blend product, service offering, maybe that might have worked in your brick and mortar because you have a brand and you're in the right place at the right time. That doesn't work with online. Of course, poor customer experience on your website, on your e-com, that's just going to turn customers away, even if they come check you out. And finally, very importantly, the online space is very competitive already, right? Extremely competitive. And there are competitors that you've never seen on the streets, at malls, in brick and mortar, right? Because the barrier to entry is so low. That's a big challenge that you should look out for. And your brick and mortar brand doesn't always have the same power online because customers look for different things. But again, we're going to talk about strategies on how to handle this and how to overcome that challenge so that you can succeed online. So with that, we're going to dive in now, the top 3 winning strategies for winning big time, hockey stick effect of your business at e-commerce. Next one, Connie. Okay, so here it is. We're going to start with number 1. Number 1, know your day one customers. You have to know who your audience is. We're going to dive deeper, but there's a saying that I love that says, when you build for everybody, it appeals to nobody. And that's cannot be more true online, right? Secondly, can you articulate what your unique selling point is, right? And please don't tell me it's your brand, because people don't just come because of the brand. They might, but they don't buy, they don't click buy because of the brand, because it's so easy to look at what else is out there online. Secondly, let's say you got your target audience, your day one customers, and you can articulate your unique selling point. And by the way, don't worry, we're going to dive deep into each one of those, right? We're not just going to leave you with the high level talking points. We're going to actually leave you with value, the recipe for success here by the end of this webinar, if you stick around. So wow user experience and a standalone online brand. So even if you figure out your day one customer, you have a unique selling point, you got a great product, a great service catered for online, your web shopping experience, your mobile shopping experience, the way the customer interacts with you, the mechanics of shopping has to wow them. It has to be frictionless, right? Because again, online, it's so easy to just go to the next store. And in fact, they may be having 2-3 stores, the tabs open where they're shopping at the same time. And secondly, let me tell you, we've worked with some of the biggest brands who thought they would just not invest in technology and piggyback off of the big mega e-commerce brand, the pioneers like Amazon, and they got burnt real bad. And then they had to come back and build a standalone brand. Your brand online has to stand alone. You can't just rely on Amazon and other third-party brands because they can drop you on a dime. And I can tell you stories about this. Last but not least, you get all this right, all the strategy, all this business, the user experience. We've seen customers who have everything right. and they're getting all this traffic. Customers are excited to do business with them, but they didn't invest in technology. Because I understand retail, brick and mortar, you don't think you're a technology company, right? But if you don't have the technology to be able to handle the traffic, the scaling, and support that enhanced user experience that you built, then you're going to lose customers because you just can't get through the checkout process. And also, last but not least, just don't stop innovating. And I will tell you why that's super important, because if you're not innovating, I can assure you there are 3-4 competitors you don't even know about online who are innovating way faster, and do not let them surprise you and ambush you one day and put you out of business, because it happens. Okay, with that said, let's dive in. Strategy number 1. Like we said, you got to know your day one customer and be able to articulate your unique selling point. Because like I said, when you build for everybody, it appeals to nobody. What does that mean, right? You could say, well, Amazon serves everybody. Everybody's a customer at Amazon. Yes, that's true, right? Now that they're a giant, they can afford to serve everybody, and they have all this energy and all of this capital to serve every customer group, right? And they've invested in AI, as we'll talk later, to be able to do that without having to scale their manpower. But when you're starting out, right, you can't afford to do that. And in fact, I wouldn't even recommend to do that, even if you had the capital. So pick your day one customer who you think you can bring a unique selling point, because you're so focused, you know them so well, you offer them a great product, a great service with that product that nobody else can match, because they're so busy serving everybody. But you focused and you win that game. And that's the customer who you need to pick and serve. And you have to be ready to say, I'm not serving the other people on day one. That's what I call day one customers. And they're the ones who are going to be so pleased, so happy, and they'll become passionate customers. You're going to turn them into super fans. And the reason why that's important, and by the way, that's exactly the story of Amazon. And I can tell you every other online business that went viral, the day one customers were such big fans, they were promoting them with their network, with social media for free. You couldn't even pay them to go speak highly of you like that at a social gathering and on social media. So picking the right day one customer is super important. Now, like I mentioned earlier, having a unique selling point that your day one passionate customers can go and share with their network in one phrase, right? And it's got to resonate. Hey, this is what's so unique about your business, right? In one phrase, they remember, it's catchy, and it's true, is super important, especially if you're still starting out or you're struggling to get your e-com presence to take off. And that's important, because in the online space, if you're selling commodity plus average service, then you better have the best pricing. And that's a race to the bottom, right? And the giants have become so big that it's almost impossible to beat them on pricing, right? So if you don't want to play the race to the bottom, you have to absolutely have a unique selling point that are going to make these customers say, you know what? I am willing to pay more, because you're doing something for me that these other guys, no matter how big and how cheap they are not doing. And they have to be able to articulate that. Extremely important. And that's why it's important to pick very specific day one customers you're going to go after and turn into fans, because you cannot have a unique selling point that's so amazing if you're serving everybody. Eventually, you will build up to serve everybody if your business allows you to scale to that level. But let's not start with that. That's the biggest mistake that most people make. A beautiful case study that I love, right? So Amazon, as we all know, pioneer of e-commerce. They made e-commerce what it is. They were starting to put big brick and mortars, at least in the United States and in many places around the world, out of business, right? So you had brands like Target that are pretty much in every city, every town in America, with this massive footprint, seeing a big shift in in their customer base wanting the convenience of shopping online. But yet they had a good brand. They had some unique service offering, unique products. So how did they come back to that when they realized that e-commerce and Amazon is not just a fad, it's here to stay, and that's where customers want to go. It wasn't just, hey, let me put all my Target store inventory online and people will buy from me. That's basically like saying, hey, let's go compete with Amazon and beat them at their own game that they'd be playing 10 years ahead of them. Well, what did? They came up with something innovative, right? That by focusing on their existing target customers, where they realized that one of the things that customers didn't like about Amazon, you had to wait 2 days, 3 days, sometimes a week to get a product. And sometimes you need the product right away because of impulse or because of need. So they came up with this brilliant concept and in many ways popularized this, where they focused on you being able to find a product that's available in a store near you, order online, it's ready in a special place, and you just go pick it up right away, right? And there's no way Amazon can compete with that. That was their unique selling point. And I think that was a brilliant comeback. And they're doing great as a brand today, in spite of all the e-commerce trend that's going on. Next one. Okay, so strategy number one, we covered that. Number two, okay, let's say you got your day one customers covered, you got your unique selling point crystallized, amazing. Now, as we discussed, now we got to make sure we invest in the mechanics of the shopping experience online, right? You could have a great product, but if your customers don't have a beautiful shopping experience online, unlike brick and mortar, they do not have to drive. And in fact, they could visit just about any store that sells what you sell or similar across the world in a second. That's the difference of online. That's why it's a very difficult beast. So PwC actually says 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for a greater user experience, because user experience equals time, equals efficiency, and people buy online because it's efficient, it's fast, and I can shop around. I have so many options. So you've got to really get your user experience right? And get that whole thing flowing. And what a lot of people don't do is they go with, oh, I think that, especially, creative people, you can't build an online website or a mobile app without creative people, but they tend to be impulsive, right? And that's great, you need that. But what you also need, what a lot of people don't invest in, is analytics that will tell you exactly all types of customers and groups, ages, gender, you name it, right? And to be able to track the funnel, what these customers are doing, you can watch them online. There's some brilliant analytics platforms and technologies, and then you can leverage AI to figure out what's the friction, what's the sticking point, and now you know exactly how to enhance that experience. Now, going back to what I said, if you're just getting started, right? If you're serving everybody, right, it's almost impossible to figure out where's the friction, how can I build this amazing experience? So that's why it's important to focus in the beginning and get it really right, to be data-driven, and to use analytics to drive your user experience design. The next one, I'll tell you, we've worked with some of the biggest retail brands who were so excited to go online, and their first impulse was like, you know what, we're not a technology company, we've got a great brand, people like what we sell, we've been around for 80 years, in some case 100 years or whatever, and they said, you know what, we're just going to leverage Amazon and platform. And Amazon invited them, say, hey, we don't make products, you make product, come on board, right, sell through us. And that was great, except one day they woke up and Amazon decided to drop them from their listings, or drop them all the way low, and play these games you hear Amazon and Google play with SEO and list ranking, and you don't even know. They don't owe you anything, right? Because you didn't pay them anything to be there. You're just doing a rev share, and overnight you just disappear, right? Or even worse, Amazon and others have basically used all the analytics about your business, your products. They know your supply chain because they did all the supply chain and delivery for you. And now they've already created a brand, Amazon label, or competing brand that they own, and just get rid of you and drop you on a dime. And we've seen Nike and a whole bunch of brands have decided to pull off of Amazon and some of the big platforms. So it's very important, more important than ever now. If you're not selling commodity and you're not in the game of lowest price and race to the bottom, to invest in building your own e-commerce brand, your .com or .co. Whatever country you're in, that your customers know and they go to directly, right? And it's okay, you can supplement some of your sales through Amazon and other channels. We call that omni-channel marketing, but your brand's got to be your thing, and you got to invest in that. Next one. So I want to talk about case studies, right? So these are two great customers that I'll tell you, they were fortunate in some ways. About 2-3 years ago, they decided to expand beyond their good old, I mean, these are, J.Crew's been around for 80 years in every mall in America. Mood's been a brand. They're on TV. They're in Project Runway. People know them, especially in New York City and across the United States. And they've been around for 50 years or whatever it is. They decided, first they tried the Amazon game because they're not a technology company. And they both got burned. And these both are customers of ours that I can talk about. They got burned. So fortunately, a couple of years ago, they decided, hey, we're going to invest in online. We're going to have our own platform. We can see the benefits of it, blah, 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 all this good stuff. So we got in, they invested in the UX and all this good stuff. And then COVID hit, right? COVID hit. And majority of these businesses, I would tell you, for example, one of them, we helped them grow their online business from about $100 million a year to about $1.5 billion within a couple of years, right? And we've done that for other brands too. We've done even more than that, right? We help brands go from 10 million to $5 billion within a short period of time. And this is what we do, right? We know this really well. So fortunately they did that, but that was still maybe 20% of their business. For example, with J.Crew, and they have footprint in every mall in America, right? COVID hit, forced shutdown, right? All the lease, all the rent, all the expenses couldn't sustain the business. They were forced to file for bankruptcy, restructuring bankruptcy, right? And we were worried as a vendor, supplier, partner of theirs, what would happen. But fortunately, their e-com saw a surge. In the middle of COVID, people were buying luxury clothing from J.Crew. I don't understand it, right? But they were. And people, instead of going to the store, were buying online. And let me tell you, because they invested in the user experience, they invested in their own brand, their online carried the entire business. And now, good news is they're emerging from bankruptcy. They've significantly reduced their real estate footprint, and they're doubling down on their e-commerce, and they're going to come out. They are coming out really strong, and it's only because of the e-com business carried them. And as we know, COVID, yes, is hopefully a one-time thing, but there are going to be other events, right? There could be a phase 2. There could be other global events, and now they're ready for it because people don't have to go to the store and be physical. It's all e-com, and they're just frictionless for people to buy from them and become fans. And same exact story with Mood Fabrics, right? They sell fabrics, and they sell fabrics to enthusiasts for like sewing. Project Runway on TV, they're the supplier. They're very popular around here. And some of their partners said, hey, who would buy fabrics online? Like, people don't do that. They want to touch and feel, right? And all this good stuff. And fortunately, they started early enough. One of their partners was very visionary. He decided to take it forward and invest big time in it. And today, their other partners who were against that are thanking him because their stores were closed for 3-4 months. And their online store not only carried all of the expenses of brick and mortar, but they actually went up the other way, because when people are at home, they can't socialize, they're buying more fabrics, they're sewing and making masks at home. They could have never guessed this, but guess what? That not only helped their business survive, but the partners are thanking this one visionary partner for making that investment. And these are great stories of what e-commerce and UX investments have done for these businesses. They've survived for that reason. And not just survived, in some cases like Mood, they grew significantly after COVID, just with online, right? So next one. All right, last but not the least, strategy number 3. You got your day one customer, you got your USP. Yeah, you got all this stuff right. You got your user experience, you built your online brand. And we've seen this happen. We manage a lot of these platforms for this reason, because sometimes they don't invest in the right platform. They don't invest in the right technology. Now you've got all these customers coming your way, but your technology can't support them, right? Now, unlike brick and mortar, you're limited to the physical space and the staff. With e-com, if it's built right in a modern way with cloud, which Tim is going to tell you all about, right? There's no reason you can't auto scale on a dime like this, right? The technology allows you to do that. In fact, you don't even have to look at it. You don't have to press a button. If you built this technology and you pick the right platform, your servers and your technology can scale with your customers and scale down as the customers go away. It's just magic at this point, right? But you have to know how to do it, and that's what we do, right? And that's how these businesses have been able to scale infinitely up and down, seasonal, and the cost is also very flexible, right? You don't have to pay when you're not using it. It's kind of like your phone or your electric bill, and that's where cloud and technology has evolved today. Last but not least, no matter what, stop thinking, hey, I'm brick and mortar, I sell a product, I'm in fashion, or I'm in appliance or furniture, whatever you're doing, whatever you're selling. So I'm not gonna innovate. I'm not gonna invest in innovation. Well, let me tell you, you can ask all these big brands who are in the graveyard of obsolete mega brands today, like BlackBerry, Circuit City, eBay, Nokia, right? You got ambushed because somebody else is innovating. And what's mind-blowing, these disruptors like Amazon, right? These cloud native companies, these pioneers, they're big now and they're starting to get a bit old, but they learned from the businesses that they disrupted, and they're investing even more in innovation so that it's very difficult for you to catch up. They want absolute monopoly. That's a whole different topic we could discuss at some other point when antitrust and all this stuff comes in. But until that happens, you got to compete with these monopolies who are innovating and disruptors in an industry where the barrier to entry is so low. So just do not stop innovating. Always spend about 10% of your budget in R&D. Always, you got to do that, because you never know when the next event comes, and you got to be ready to get lucky. So with that said, we'll skip the next slide, and I'm going to turn it over to our brilliant, really smart CTO here to tell you about how to build the technology platform a little bit more.
Thank you, Love, so much for a lot of the business insight here. So I'm here, like Love said, to talk a little bit more technical, talk a little bit more about what we see from the platforms, what your choices are, and I'm going to talk a little bit of some pain points we'll see, and that's probably what we'll start with. And then I do have a little bit more in depth of a case study that I want to walk you through with, basically show you the before and after picture. So that's what you're in store for here. So first, let's talk some pain points. And these are more general pain points. I would say they're more on the platform side, the commerce platform, but really they could apply for if you build your own or even on the smaller ones. So first, let's start here. So you got some high maintenance costs. And these are really costs in general, right? So this could include things like software licenses or subscriptions, or your underlying IaaS environment if you stand up a cloud environment. I mean, all these software and platforms need to get deployed somewhere, and at some point you need to pay for them, whether that's a subscription based on a more of a SaaS platform, or your AWS or GCP bill that you're actually paying and serving up infrastructure and compute and storage and all that fun stuff. You have development costs, whether that be your maintenance and running and actually operating the environment, or innovating and creating new features. and how you integrate and your time to market. These are all costs that go into a platform. And if you can't control these costs, you get into this situation where it's almost not even worth running it. So cost, number one thing. Second, being able to handle spikes in traffic. And think email campaigns. Marketing comes up with this blast for buy one get one free or whatever it is, and it goes out to all your user base. All of a sudden, you're going to get this huge surge in traffic, and it's all going to come at once and overwhelm your systems if you're not ready for it. And in the old world, in the data center where you had your own servers and your own infrastructure you needed to support, you basically needed to have your max capacity of what you were planning on doing. And if you needed to scale, you would leverage all of that. And when you weren't, that stuff would just sit idle, and it would really be just a cost sink. But luckily, we live in a day and age where we have this thing called cloud computing, where you can expand and contrast as you need. So as these big email campaigns or these big holiday events like Black Friday come and you get this huge surge of traffic, you can actually automatically scale out your environments. So if you can't handle the peak traffic, that's really going to be the killer. Also think that, all these pages, all these SEO robots that come out and scan your site, as they scan your site, they mimic real users and can put your system under tremendous amounts of stress. So if you can't handle these, a bot may come in and mimic a real user and end up taking down your site. And, that really takes revenue coming into your pockets and making a poor experience for the rest of your users. SKUs in the database. So as you create products, yes, that's good right there. Your database grows. So this is a problem for databases. As they start to grow and exceed what a database can handle, you have to keep track of indexes, keeping the data accessible. You may have lots of queries that are run just to pull a page up. So you need to be able to make sure you offload and control how that database is actually set up. And could become the linchpin of your entire system. I mean, if your application is waiting for your database to respond, then you're going to have a problem. And then finally, how long it takes to roll out new features to market. As Love said, if you're not thinking about your competitors, they are probably innovating and building out features that you're not even aware of. So you need to be able to make sure that when you or your team come up with an idea, how long does it take you to get that idea from just someone's mind into actual production and actually get real users on it, and a way to test it. What happens if the idea that they came up with you think is gold and you roll it out and you find that your conversion rate goes down? So you need a way to basically back that out and really work on that feature set. All right, Connie, now you can go to the next slide. So the first question, and probably the most important one, do we want to build or buy? And I'm sure that everybody has crossed their minds. Do we want to go out and create a new system from the ground up? Or, there's a lot of platforms out there. Do we want to take those platforms and go with it and maybe customize it, maybe just use them as is? So how do we make that decision? What's the thinking behind that? So first, let's talk build, right? So with build, first, it's going to take you longer to get going. You need to build everything. You need to build the code. You need to build your release pipelines. You need to build the infrastructure. You need to build the database. All of this takes time, and it takes, design. You need to come up with a great design. So if you have the time and the money, because it's going to be more expensive because you need to hire your own staff or consult or whatever you're going to do to somebody to create it, it's going to be a longer journey. But the journey is typically worth it at the end. You're going to get the ability to basically customize anything you need. You're going to be able to tailor towards your users, as Love said, that's probably one of the most important things, know your customer. And if you can customize down to that specific customer, you're really going to get a lot of value out of that. You're also going to have a giant pool of devs. So whether you're consulting or hiring, you're bound by the language you choose and not necessarily the platform you choose. As you start to pick out those platforms, your pool is going to get smaller and probably your cost for paying them is going to go up. And it's going to be cheaper to run at scale. So, as you grow, as you add new features, with these platforms, which I'll talk about in a second, they're tend to be a little bit more monolithic in structure. You're bound by some sort of SaaS program or some sort of defining structure. If you build it yourself, you can adhere to more of a microservice-based architecture and be able to scale those services independently. So, if you have like a login service and like maybe a shopping cart service and maybe like a marketing service, and you get a lot of demand on the marketing side, you can just scale that out. You don't have to scale the whole thing. So, the kind of the precedent here is it starts off cheap, but as you grow, you really start to, it starts off expensive, but as you start to grow, you really start to see a lot of benefits as you start to deploy more and more users. So on the buy side, there's a tremendous amount of tools out there, and I'm going to talk in a second a little bit more detail about some of them and kind of compare at a high level. I put these three up there because I thought they were kind of the market leaders right now, but it's much easier and quicker to get going. I mean, you can take these base applications, and if they're like BigCommerce or a Shopify, they're actually SaaS offerings. So you just basically go in, sign up, and you're off to the races, starting to bring and customize for your needs. Like Magento is a platform that you're going to be able to give you a lot of base functionality. They give you that shopping cart, and it's really a framework that really starts you off. This saves a lot of time on the development side, saves you a lot of money because these tools are, or at least Magento is, open source. And there have a good amount of rich communities who are willing to help, plugins and tools, but that comes at a cost. They're less flexible. They're harder to run at higher workloads. So as you start to add more and more users, and which I'll showcase in some of my case study, expanding them out and running them horizontally becomes more of a challenge because they're monolithic applications. They're more difficult to run at scale, and that could be a challenge. So with the buy side, or the free side, if you want to call it, it tends to start off cheaper, but starts to get more expensive as you grow larger and larger, and ended up having to throw more resources at it. All right, so next slide, Connie. So let's talk some of the leading choices here for platforms. And this is the Gartner's Magic Quadrant report. So you can get a nice overview of where you want to be in that upper right-hand corner. And leaders are really seen as Adobe, Magento, Salesforce, and SAP. These are your big time players. They're really rich in features. They're more on the complicated side. I would almost even say they might be a little bit bloated in some areas. And there's a lot of different deployment options. You can, run these in, at least for Magento, you can run it as a SaaS in the Magento Commerce Cloud, or if you have a cloud provider of choice, if you're familiar with GCP or Azure or Amazon and want to stand up your own infrastructure, you can actually deploy them there and run it there. These leaders, I would say, are probably better for the larger organizations, not as large as the build option, but still kind of that larger size of the e-commerce retailers. But you do have some big challengers that I think are starting to really gain traction. Those being like the Spotify and Shopify. Got my music in my mind, or BigCommerce. And these are a little bit different approaches. They're more cloud-based deployments. So think of the SaaS models that they have, less customizations that you can make to these, and you're probably going to pay more for some of the packaged features because you really don't have to manage these. All the non-business features are really treated as a managed service, and you're getting that and you're paying for it. So BigCommerce, I would probably say, is more suited for your medium sites, and Shopify is much better for your smaller deployments. So as you start to slide up from your scale and your size, so if you're on the larger side, you're going to have more customizations that you can do, and you're going to have to control more things. But as you slide down to the Shopify side, you're going to get less control over it, but you're going to get a lot more benefits from the operational side. So just kind of an overview of where you should land. So next slide, please, Connie. So let's talk a case study here. So I think this is a great case study. It really showcases some of the, let's call it, older ways of doing e-commerce to how we were able to advance them and move them forward. So this is for a large US-based e-commerce retailer. They got around 50,000 independent different SKUs in their catalog, somewhere around 53,000 different pages that are both static and dynamic. Mostly dynamic, so those are things that will automatically build the page when you go to them. So, you know, when SEO and spiders go to them, it really starts to tax the application as it crawls through their site. They were running on Magento 1 in EC2 instances on AWS, and they were using Redis for their caching and some of their offloading. And then they used RDS, which is a MySQL managed service for their database and their catalogs. Their real main challenges were a couple things. So first, they were running Magento 1. So if you don't know, this went end of life in June of this year. So that means that it is no longer supported by Magento, no longer getting security updates, and this really puts them at a big risk, and they didn't want to run with this risk. They had really big lack of scalability, which I'll kind of go into in the next slide, but essentially I'll show you why. And you know, because of that, the SEO spiders were out there killing the site. Every time they would get hit, these bots would essentially bring down the site. They had very costly bills on the IaaS side because they were running essentially oversized EC2 instances in Amazon. So this was expensive to run. And they saw AWS as a competitor. You know, they were worried about them stealing their data. So really wanted to get off the platform. And then finally, they even had some slow page loads with that Redis cache sitting there. Redis doesn't really do great for, you know, speeds. So they were seeing an average of 5 seconds of page load time. So, you know, not great. And if you guys don't know, you know, users start to get bored after about 2 seconds. So if your site doesn't load in that time frame, they're usually bouncing to your competitor. All right, next slide. So this is a very, very simple architecture. They basically had a VM that was stood up that in EC2s are essentially just VMs, which was running Magento and Redis in tandem, and then an FTP process to communicate and bridge the gap between their ERP system and their database. And when they needed to scale, this EC2 instances basically need to be replicated. So these are very heavy systems, takes minutes to multiple minutes to actually start. And by the time that the site or the traffic is hitting them, they can't scale fast enough because they're then trying to get up and run with that system. And there wasn't really many automated ways. So they would actually get an alert, go in and physically start the machines. And by the time that they got them up and running, the traffic either got frustrated and left or started to move on to other systems. I would say the big shining light here is probably the database and the RDS. That was probably the most scalable piece they had as it was multi-regional. So very basic architecture, really struggled because of how they had it deployed in Amazon. So next slide, Connie. So what we did for them. So first, the major change we made is we upgraded them from Magento 1 to Magento 2. So this is a big architectural change. It gets them in the realm of being supported. They're now able to create new features based on some of the enhancements to Magento 2. We switched them over from AWS to GCP. So we did a complete port of them from the actual CSP. So no longer can Amazon snoop into their data and start looking into what they're doing. We have them in another platform. We containerize them. So that's a huge win. And there aren't many places, and in fact, I think we're the only ones that have done this so far. But we took the Magento application that ran in VMs and we containerized them. So, you know, I actually just did a tech talk on the value of containers versus VMs, but, you know, VMs are a little heavier and more difficult to scale out. And with a platform like GKE or Google Kubernetes engine, it takes care of a lot of the maintenance of running that Kubernetes cluster. So by running these Magento instances in a container, we gave them a lot of horizontal scalability and flexibility to meet demand as they need it. We ended up terraforming their entire environment in infrastructure as code. So this is a great achievement because now when they need to test something, we needed to do a load test, or we needed to, you know, maybe we found a bug in an environment. We can use essentially a button to go and create a lower environment that mimics production 100% to test out anything we need to do. And, you know, this gives us a lot of our disaster recovery and our zones, and able to spin up these new environments as we see fit. And, you know, it's just a great way to go and best practice for anybody that should be implementing cloud implementations. We added varnish in for full page cache. So this is all those dynamic pages that I actually talked about, we pre-warmed them and loaded them into a cache, which made sub-second load times on these pages. So even when SEO spiders would start to hit the site, they would pull up the varnished pages that were cached, and the site would see no increase in the amount of users on it. So you were able to satisfy user demand by getting instant load pages, as well as handle all the SEO bots that were out there. Horizontal scaling, since we used containers, we're able to automatically meet demand as it came into the system. And then since we have all this automation in place, we were using time-based teardowns of environments. So, at night and on weekends when the environments weren't being used, we actually automatically shut them down. That way it saves costs, because if no one's using them, and in the cloud model, you pay for what you use. So if you're not using it and it's actually powered down, you don't get charged. So a lot of this automatic shutting down allows us to go in and save a lot of costs. So, these are all great. We do these changes for a reason, and we do them to drive business value. So what business value did they see out of this? So first, they saw about a 20% overall reduction in costs. And that was mostly from switching from Amazon to GCP and containerizing their workloads, as well as doing those automatic teardowns. I mean, that's a pretty significant number. And I believe we can actually get that down further. We supported the application. They get a supported application running in Magento 2. And they get those instant page loads. So right away, those users can see an amazing turnaround from their old one. And since everything is running in containers, we made them agnostic on their platform. So, tomorrow, if they were done with, GCP and wanted to go to a different vendor, we could easily switch them and move them out. And finally, the most important thing is the 34% increase in sales. So Connie, next one. I'm going to just go real quickly. I just want to show you what this architecture looked like. And I think we're running out of time here, but essentially this is all the different services, and you can see they're all independently now. You can scale them on demand, and you can push them and operate them as you need fit. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Connie here for the final steps and the conclusion.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So that was exciting. Strategy is important. We talk strategy, we talk big picture. We gave you the recipe for success in e-commerce. And then we looked under the hood, the engine, and Tim is one of the best at it in the world. And thank you, because it's important. Technology is important, because that's what fuels everything you're going to do in e-commerce. But coming full circle, as the title of the slide says, hurry up. I'm going to hurry up because I know we're running out of time here. But the big question is, are you there yet? Right? You've seen all of this beautiful growth happening for a lot of people, right? And if you're enjoying it, great. If you're not, the question is, are you there yet? That means we got to move. We got to go quick, because it's not too late, like I mentioned before. Also, the pioneers have learned, right? The Amazons and the ones that like Target and other brands that you probably, are very niche but doing great. They've learned from the businesses they've disrupted. So they're not stopping their innovation. They continue moving forward. So you got to move in, and then you got to catch up, right? If you really want to succeed and prepare your retail business for what's coming next. What you've seen in COVID, I think it's going to be 10x that in the next few years. So the big emerging trend right now is AI. And AI is a game changer, right? And if you don't get into e-com, you don't lay the foundation first, you can't do AI before you have cloud and you got your tech foundation solid. Because when AI comes in, you're going to see things that you just can't do at scale in brick and mortar. Even if you have the best sales rep on the ground who's very emotionally connected and knows how to sell with customers. Imagine doing that, your best salesperson at scale, completely automated. And that's what AI brings to the table. All the big guys are investing big time in AI for that reason. personalized shopping experience. I can omni-channel targeting. I can predict what you're going to want. Forget you tell me. I'm going to predict what you're going to want, and I'm going to personalize what I show to you. And what's amazing is they can then, with AI, based on live real-time clicks and buys, they can use that as what we call incremental training to train their inventory, so that you are basically pushing more of the things that are selling, but at a micro-targeted level. It's not for everybody. If this type of customer, this profile of a customer is buying more of this, we're going to show more of these customers what they're buying. And I'm sure many of you have experienced, you said something about something you were interested in buying or problem you had. You could swear to God you never typed it online, you never messaged anybody, you were talking maybe to somebody at home, and all of a sudden an ad showed up in Facebook for that. A lot of people think that Facebook is listening to you. In fact, they even went to Congress and they had to testify that they had no ability to do that. I don't know what's the truth. I don't know what to believe, but it's happened to me. But that's where the AI is going, and that's what you have to compete with. And in addition to that, people who are investing in AI are seeing a tremendous efficiency in their supply chain and last mile delivery to make that end-to-end experience, because purchase is only part of it. Then you got to get it to the customer, you got to service it, and you got to do that now really, really fast. And they're really, leading the way on that. So there's a lot of catching up to do. And finally, you simply, believe me when I tell you, it's not too late, but you got to get started now before they get further ahead, and lay the foundation, stay focused on your day one customer. The brilliant thing is that you can focus, they can't, they're too big to focus, right? So you can pick your target market, you can own them the same way that Amazon did it on day one with book clubs and book enthusiasts and just selling book, right? Pick your market, win it, own it, and then you can scale from there. And they cannot do that. And that's the beautiful part. But you got to invest in technology. You got to invest in innovation. So coming full circle, just to recap the winning strategies: know your day one customer and be able to articulate your unique selling point. Number two, build a wow user experience, a brand that can stand alone, your .com, your .co, whatever, and be data driven in your decision and how you build that experience. Finally, last but not the least, just do not stop innovating, because you don't want to get ambushed by somebody you didn't even know existed, who all of a sudden is doing what you're doing way better and offering way better product. Because customers online, loyalty, not that great, because they have way too many options, way too convenient to move around. And again, hurry, it's not too late. You can do it yourself if you have the strategy, you have the confidence, you have the skills, you have the team. Or a shameless plug, if you need help, we're here, reach out to us. We're happy to engage and do a personalized consultation and also help you through this journey if that's what you need. Thank you. And now we're going to move to questions.
Yes, and I want to stay with the top of the hour that we need. People probably have meetings to move on to. So we are going to take questions offline and answer them there. So thank you for everyone for attending, and we will have our next webinar announced soon.